Hey guys, Youngblood with you for the 69th episode of the Inbox, and we're going to go ahead and start off with a question from Dudecraft Gaming saying, hey, I'm really concerned about griefers and generally asshole players when the game is released. Like if some guy who likes to just destroy every ship he finds gets control of a capital ship, maybe a really strong one, and no one can stop him. Will the devs ban these people? What if I play alone? Do I need other players to run a big ship? So that's a couple of different questions there, and I think a big part of that's going to be answered by the reputation system. Now, the reputation system is going to hold people accountable for their performance because it's going to be harder for them to do things in the verse. So either people aren't going to want to do business with people that are generally considered bad people. They may end up having warrants and bounties, meaning they can't actually land in certain locations. They're probably going to be pestered by law enforcement quite a bit. So there's going to be some ramifications. Now, there's not going to be some magic button where, okay, you crash into 3-player ships and boom, you're disconnected from the server and can't log back in. At least I wouldn't think so. I think if somebody is a griefer and ends up in a really powerful ship, I mean, we saw this in Elite Dangerous. You'd get people that were, kind of griefers / just murderers who would want to just jack up to a really high bounty because then all of a sudden it was like a level of notoriety that was associated with that. You'd see people in anacondas flying around just gimping you the second you jumped out or they pulled you out of Super Cruise. So it can be an issue, but there are going to be things that will help balance things out. The law enforcement and systems will help. There's player organizations of large sizes, and it's going to be a lot easier to play together in Star Citizen than it was in Elite Dangerous. So you're probably not going to go out and be able to compete against some griefer in a Polaris by yourself if you're in a Freelancer. But that doesn't mean that Polaris is invincible. You could get a crew, you could get a wing, you could even hire out, you can place a bounty on that person. There's going to be a lot of things that you can do, and there's going to be probably a lot of organizations that kind of set up the, I don't want to use the phrase white knight, but, set up that protector type role. There's going to be players that are harassing people, and they want to come in and protect the general population. That's going to be a thing. So if you find that somebody's out there that's causing a lot of harm, you're going to have ways to kind of get other people involved to try and stop that from actually happening. That's not going to be a permanent change to that person, but it resolves the concern immediately. As far as do you need other players to run a big ship, most ships you can run solo with NPCs, but you have to hire and pay those NPCs. You're not going to be able to take out, an Idris on your own. You're going to need a lot of NPCs to do that. And in fact, I wouldn't probably even get into a capital ship without other players involved because the cost is going to be really high. The effectiveness is going to be in question. It may just flat out not work. So it kind of depends on what you're talking about. I would say I would probably feel confident going up to something like a Carrack solo with NPCs, something that's really like a 5, 6, 7 crew ship and having NPCs be the rest. But I wouldn't go beyond that and just rely on NPCs because that becomes a lot of management for you. Lamika81 says, have they mentioned how the new boost and afterburner systems as well as quantum jumping will work with stealth vehicles? There hasn't really been anything specifically stated about those. Now, we can extrapolate some information that we got and kind of talk about how that may have an impact. As far as quantum jumping is concerned, I don't think it's going to make any impact. I don't think what you're doing with the ship is going to, you could have a super stealth ship, but if you engage quantum, it's going to be loud. There's not a stealth quantum drive out there, at least as far as we're aware of. So, if you're talking about a Saber, you can probably lay in wait and be pretty stealthy, but the second you decide to make a jump, you're probably going to leave a wake there that's going to be noticeable to other players. As far as boost and afterburner are concerned, I think the one piece where we got a little bit more of this information was in the Asperia Prowler documentation. Where they said that the Prowler itself has a ability to boost up to a really fast speed very quickly based on having some nice boost reserves. But that goes against kind of the purpose of this ship, which is really more of a being able to sneak in, and you become very loud if you decide to use the boost. So boost and afterburner are probably going to be things that you want to kind of use carefully if you're in a stealth ship. You want to lay in wait, you want to move in slowly to kind of keep your signatures down, but if you end up striking the boost or the afterburner, you probably want to be using that to make your engagement to kind of catch your target off guard because those are going to be things that make your ship very hot, probably from an EM and IR perspective. Crewman number 6 says, hello Youngblood. Which of the freelancers, regular or the max, would be best for single player haul-in? I have a Hull B, but I've always liked the Freelancer. The Freelancer is a cool ship. I like the Hull B too, though. But as far as which is the best for hauling, I mean, the Max is kind of the dedicated hauler of the group. It hauls significantly more than the others, and it's the one that actually has a real, like, unique hull to the ship. It is actually wider. It's got 2 more engines on it. It is made to carry more cargo. And as far as crew requirements are concerned, you don't necessarily have the addition of extra people that you need to fly the ship. So in my mind, the Freelancer Max is one of my favorite ships, and if you're interested in doing single-player hauling, I think the Max is probably one of your best bets out there, especially assuming you can probably swap out a lot of components and get some flexibility out of that ship. Miguel Hahn asked a question that I've answered before, but some things have changed recently. It's what are your specs? It's so smooth. So before, when I did this, I was on an i5, and I recently upgraded, I think I mentioned this in one of my update videos, to a new Ryzen build. So my CPU now is a Ryzen R7 1700. I'm cooling that with a Swiftech H220X, and I'm on a ASRock X370 Gaming K4 motherboard. My RAM is now Corsair's LPX. I've got 16 gigabytes of 32 megahertz RAM. And then I'm running a GTX 1080. It's actually the Gigabyte G1 version. That's all wrapped up in a Thermaltake chaser. I've got a 750 watt power supply. I got a bunch of fans in there and stuff. So that's kind of the core of it. I guess my operating system drive is on an M.2 drive. It's incredibly fast. And my games are all loaded up on SSDs, where my video storage and stuff is all on traditional 2 terabyte hard drives. Satoran says, before I get into Satoran's question, as far as the specs go, I am going to be doing a follow-up video on how Ryzen's performing in Star Citizen. I'll probably do a couple of those, but just know some of the, there's going to be some limits based on netcode and everything. A lot of what we see isn't necessarily hardware, so again, that'll be coming later. So, now, Satoran. Since kinetic weapons need to be stronger than energy weapons to compensate for limited ammo in the persistent universe, aren't kinetic weapons always going to be the best choice for Arena Commander where ammo pickups are available? Kind of. It's hard to say. The kinetic weapons get a benefit because they can pass through shields and do damage to your ship. And when you start talking about the Arena Commander scoring, you get points for damage. And so when you're using physical weapons, you're actually getting points on pretty much every shot because you're able to penetrate the shields. Now, obviously, once the shields go down, you end up then being able to do more damage, and energy weapons take down the shields faster. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. I think what we'll probably end up seeing at the end of the day is that some combination of the two is probably your best bet. Something like sucker punches to help take down the shields, and then you use your ballistics to really do a lot of damage from there. So it's kind of hard to say. I don't necessarily think that they're stronger to compensate for limited ammo. I think that's part of it, but I think what you're seeing in Arena Commander today is the fact that, you do get the damage, which kind of gives them that impression of being stronger. Now, they are in the most part, but, there are weapons that are like the neutron cannons that do a crap load of damage as well, and those are balanced out by having a slow rate of fire and a short range. So it's not just going to be the limited ammo that balances things, like laser repeaters, for example. They fire very quickly. They've got a decent range. There's no ammo restrictions, but the damage is a little bit lower. But if you sustain that damage over time, it ends up putting out a lot of damage. So it's going to depend. I don't think it's always going to be the best bet, but it's always going to be a good bet. And then you posted a follow-up. What do you think is the best loadout for a Super Hornet in 2.6? I always preferred the Panther repeaters in the past, but they aren't doing enough damage to the ships in Pirate Swarm. In Pirate Swarm, my favorite right now is the M loadout, basically putting the M5As under the wings and the nose, and then I put the flash fire mount on top and put a M5A up there. An M6A up there. The pips are pretty close. You don't have to worry about ammo, and they do a lot of damage. In Arena Commander, I prefer to go ballistics as playing against other players, and I generally run tarantulas in that situation. Dragon Heart Bleed says, hey STL, now that CIG has moved over to Lumberyard from CryEngine to base the Star Engine on, do you think we'll see any real FPS bumps in the test PU? Right now it only seems to be 40 FPS max or so. Thanks for the help and info, man. You are welcome. As far as Star Engine and CryEngine, I don't think the move to Lumberyard is going to make any difference at all, at least in the short term. I think what we're seeing as far as the FPS restrictions in the game are tied directly to the netcode. Now, where we may see benefits is that the Lumberyard is going to give them more flexibility and ability to add updates quicker, and that faster development cycle is going to mean that you may see improvements coming faster, but it's not a direct result of being on the Lumberyard. So once they figure out the netcode, that's what's going to really fix things. Star Engine needs to be addressed, and that has to do with the serialized variables and what's actually rendering and all of that good stuff. So once that's all been fixed, that can be imported into Lumberyard faster. They can do testing on that quicker, and that's what's really going to net the benefits. But it's not necessarily just the fact that you're now on Lumberyard. Mish says, hey, Youngblood, are there long-term rewards for sticking to and becoming high level in an occupation? Say I'm cultivating shitloads of space weed in my endeavor and reach a high level in that field. Will I unlock something special that someone only at my tier of skill can do? So you're not necessarily going to have like a skill tree, so it's not going to be like you as some guru of space weeding is going to be someone who can create, the dankest of the dank. It's probably going to be more like you then develop relationships with other people in that field that make your job a little bit better, and you can get better prices from them, or you get more opportunities to sell different people. There's going to be other benefits. It's not going to be like I'm a skilled 10 space weed farmer, so that I can, grow a better quality product. Your reputation is probably going to open you up to being able to purchase things that make you end up being able to create better things. And that kind of falls into the reputation system as far as the guilds are concerned. When they were talking about what happens if I step away from a career for a while. So let's say you're really focused on repairing, you're in some like repairing guild, and you step away from that to do things like mining. If you go back to repairing, it's not like you've lost your skill in that area, but you may lose some of the relationships that you've developed and your reputation with some of the people in that field. So that's, I think, what you're going to see in the example that you're providing. Your dedication to growing space weed is going to make you a better weed farmer because you are dealing with other people that have good reputations and good regulations that can help you be better at doing that. But again, it's not tied to a direct skill level. And our last question is from Sketchy, a patron question. How will CIG prevent insurance fraud, specifically if ships can be pirated and then made legit through some process? What stops friends from giving friends the ship away and reporting it stolen? This is something that's just really going to need to be worked out, because we do know that if somebody steals a ship, you could potentially end up changing out the transponder and the registration of the ship, which is going to make it look like a legal ship. So there are going to be tricky ways to make this happen. That obviously comes with cost to the person. So I don't know what CIG is going to do about it. They may just say, we don't care. I kind of doubt that's going to happen. There may be like algorithms that look for certain patterns, like this person is on this person's friend list, so they've given a ship here, and then that person now keeps it and they've changed the registration. Those sorts of things may take place. I don't know. I think that's something a lot of people are wondering about, and I think we're really going to need to look for more information, but I think it's going to have to be something pretty deep on the back end to really prevent this from becoming abused, and we'll just need to see what they come up with. But as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I've heard so far, they don't have an answer on this yet. So that's this episode of The Inbox. I appreciate you guys watching. I'm starting to get caught up on questions, so if you have more, get them in. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later. Take care.